All right, well, good morning. It is 11:30. We'll call the meeting to order. Carrie, will you please do a roll call?
Gallaudet. You're muted, Sonia.
I'm in my classroom and there's multiple things happening, so I was directing traffic.
Not a problem.
Yep.
Clenny.
Here.
Magnuson.
Here.
Pantera.
Here.
Westonsko.
Here.
All board members present.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Well, welcome to our annual September meeting. I am thrilled to announce that we have our two newest trustees here with us today, one remotely and one in person. So welcome, Brian Clenny and Nikki. You go by Nikki, is that correct? Nick, you prefer Nikki? Okay, Nikki. Okay, Nikki Trammell Pantera. And I would just ask if you would maybe, well, starting with Brian, if you will just give us just a brief introduction of yourself and what prompted you to put your name in to participate as a trustee on the library board.
Okay, thank you for introducing me. Brian Clenny. I am a husband, father, grandfather, avid outdoors person. My family and I have lived in Boise for a total of about 18 years in two separate stints. Early 90s through 2000, and then most recently returned in 2013. And my kids all went to Storybook Hour here at the Boise Public Library, got their start in school, love of reading and love of books. And I've been a big fan ever since. And I was really interested in the opportunity to be part of helping to determine what the library's future is, because I think it's such an important role in our community.
All right, thank you, Brian. And then Nikki, we'll go ahead and go with you next. And then we'll, as the trustees, we will also go around and introduce ourselves to you as well. So with that, Nikki.
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to be here. I am a lawyer by practice. I've done a lot of kind of public finance projects. So anyway, I've always kind of had a passion for public spaces and how they add to the community. And I love the library. I'm a Boise native, been here my whole life. My kids and I spend lots of time at the library. Like I mentioned, we did the Read to a Therapy Dog last weekend. It was real fun. So anyway, I'm just glad to be here, and kind of like Phil, I'm glad to kind of be part of the discussion and the future of the library.
All right, thank you, Nikki. Well, welcome to Nikki and Brian. We are so excited to have both of you join us as the newest trustees. I am Tanya Westonsko, and I am finishing up my last year of my two-term tenure here as a library trustee. So I'll be with you for this first year for each of you. I am a banker by trade. However, have just always had such a drive to share what the library has with the experience with our community. It is something that I grew up with. My children, we also did Story Hour. I just have a love of learning from the library perspective. But our library, as you both will find out, is so much more than just checking out books, as I'm sure you are starting to see or have seen in your personal lives as well. And so I know you both will have the passion that the rest of us have as trustees on the board, and look forward to your active participation as our newest trustees. So with that, Phil, would you do an introduction of yourself as well, please?
Hi, I'm Phil Magnuson. I've lived in Boise since 1990 with one sidetrack, and then I came back. My mother was a librarian, so I've always been in and out of libraries and was very interested about the next phase of the Boise Library. My background is in software development and technology companies. So welcome aboard to our new trustees.
All right, Sonia.
Hi, everyone. Sonia Gallaudet. I'm a school teacher actually just down the road at Garfield Elementary. Hi, welcome. Usually I can find a quiet corner in the school. I've got a buddy colleague. My kids are right here. I could whip the camera around and they'd say hello. But teaching in the pandemic is a real thing, and there's no coverage, there's no sub. So the teachers, we really take care of each other. So forgive the mask and the setting. The library, for me, being on the board of trustees, the library is really an extension of the classroom. And I am an evangelist for public education. And so I see the cooperation and the collaboration between schools and libraries is absolutely essential for kids. So that's kind of a focus I bring to this board. So welcome, everybody, and looking forward to meeting face-to-face someday.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sonia. And I guess let's just go quickly around the room. I'll try to be cognizant of our time. So starting with Rob, just so that our newest trustees have a name to the face there.
Sure, Rob Lockford, City Attorney's Office. See me just sporadically here. Hi, Nikki. Hope Tony as well. Good to see you. Currently, I serve Mayor's Office, Council, Parks, a lot of our real estate stuff, and kind of just sensitive information. I'm just here for the latter part of the meeting.
And I'm Ed Jewell. I'm also at the City Attorney's Office. I'm an attorney, and I'll probably handle most of the library day-to-day sort of questions that you might have about your responsibilities as a trustee.
All right, thank you, Ed. And Brian. Brian is joining us in person today. And introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Brian Manship. I am also a banker by profession, and I actually represent the foundation board. So I'm here to represent the board, and just the main reason I got involved in what I'm doing now was by invitation first, but then I realized, you know what, the library gave so much to my kids growing up that I think that it's a great place to put some attention and emphasis, because I remember my girls going to something about bear tales or something like that, where they stories, and what they did is they got a love to learn things, and that was all from the library. They got excited at a very young age about learning new things and seeing new things and kind of expanding the horizons. So I got involved in the library, and I think that's a worthy effort.
Thank you. All right, thank you for everyone. And those that are on remotely, will grab you as we step on to your portions of the call for those introductions as well. All right. So
quick question.
Yes, Phil.
So the person from the city who's in the legal department, is Kelly switching out of that role? And then we have a new person there?
So Kelly has switched out of the role, Phil, and Ed has been our representation on behalf of the city. And then Rob is just here for the latter part of the meeting today.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
Kelly's still with the city though, so
oh, that's good.
You know, she's just doesn't have the capacity to do both us and some of the other city functions she supports. So that's why we have Ed now, and we have more of Ed than Kelly was able. But she's always a backup and a resource for him.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you, Phil. All right, so moving on to try to stay on track for the agenda. We have no communications, and our next item up is the minutes, which is an action item. So do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes? You have a chance to review them?
I will move we accept the meeting minutes as written.
Okay.
Second.
You have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Okay. Motion passes for the meeting minutes. Consent agenda. All right, for all matters on the consent agenda may be either approved separately or in a single motion. And so for Sonia and Phil, we have the payment of the bills and payroll as well as the financial reports. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, sure.
I will move we accept the consent agendas for both payments and the financial report.
Second.
Okay, second, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? Okay. All right, that motion carries. So next up on the agenda is the report, and we have the Friends of the Boise Public Library, and I believe we have Jill. Hello, Jill.
If I can get my mute and my unmute organized, it'll be a miracle. But hello. Hi, I'm Jill Johnson. I'm the president of the board of the Friends of the Public Library. Welcome to the new trustees and also to Brian from the foundation. I hope that the Friends and all these new folks will continue with our great collaboration in support of this great institution. I just wanted to give a brief report on what happened with the Boise Comic Arts Festival for us. Normally, as you know, it's a 2-day event. This year it was 1 day in person, 1 day hybrid. So normally we would be selling things at the event for the full 2 days. We were there for 1 day this time. We still managed to make almost $2,600, which is fantastic. Last year, obviously, we didn't make anything because it was all virtual and there was nobody to sell stuff to. But the 2 prior years, we had in 2019, we had made $4,800 and in 2018, $3,900. But we did manage, even with a 1 day sale, to outsell our 2017 and prior numbers. So it shows that there's still a great appetite in the community for picking up some of the stuff that we get donated to us and can pass on into new hands. So we're very excited about that. This year, for the first time, we also offered BCAF t-shirts for sale to the public. And we had a pretty decent response. About 50% of the shirts we sold went to library staff at the event. And then we sold an additional 50% to staff members for families and friends, but also to the public. And that went really well. Next year, maybe we'll have a little bit more lead time and can figure out how to do that a little bit more smoothly and maybe get some more interest. But as far as a first time outing, it was a pretty good success. So thank you.
Thank you for that update. Board members, do you have any questions for Jill?
No.
Okay. Jill, that was a great recap of the event and the shirts. I love that we were getting an opportunity to get those shirts out there into the public for visual as well. So thank you for all that you guys are doing.
Yeah, it was a great experiment and we hope to recreate it bigger and better next time.
That is something we're used to hearing from the Friends. So we look forward to that. Thank you, Jill. All right. So next up is the Boise Public Library Foundation report with Brian Manship.
All right. It's good to be here. Once again, my name is Brian Manship. I am the current treasurer of the foundation board. And this is my first time at this meeting, and I'm representing the board. And I thought I'd take just a minute, first of all, to kind of tell everyone what the board is doing and what we're about. The foundation has about 15 board members, directors on the board currently. And as a board, we really have 3 functions or 3 missions. One is to raise awareness for the for and of the library, to promote or to make others aware of the value in our community and the programs that are available. Number 2, to raise friends for the library. And number 3, to raise funds to support the programs, to support the mission of the library and its role in our community. Over the past 18 months, and due to the situation of the pandemic, we have not met as a full board for almost the entire 18 months. However, the executive committee has been meeting on a regular basis and meeting with Jessica as well. And I'm happy to report that we are finally going to meet Tuesday, the 14th of September, as a full board. And the main purpose, well, not the main, but a big significant purpose of that meeting is to elect a new chairperson. Lynn Hoffman, who has been serving as chair for the past little over a year, has resigned to focus her attention on another very worthy effort on a board that she's going to provide some leadership to. So that will take place on the 14th. And And that's pretty much all I have right now.
Okay, well, that was a great recap, Brian. Thank you. Trustees, are there questions for Brian Manship? All right, Brian, thank you, sir. Okay, up next, we have the library director report. Jessica?
Thank you, Tanya. And I just want to extend my warm welcome again to Brian and Nikki. We're really thrilled that you have been able to join and eager to have you involved in learning about this wonderful institution, in particular, learning about the staff, which I think are just some of the best, most creative, most dedicated library people that I've ever worked with. You'll get to hear, you'll hear more from some of them today, and then obviously during your tenure, you'll also get to meet a lot of them as well. In August, the big thing that the library did is we expanded again our in-person open hours to the public. So about 3 weeks ago, we were able to add back in more hours. That means that as a system, we are now open 7 days a week across the system, and we also have been able to add back some evening hours. As you remember, during the summer, we were really focused on being open for when kids were our heavy users, but we knew that that also meant that we didn't have nights and weekends, and with additional staff hired and onboarded, we've been able to add those hours back. And so we're seeing the expected uptick in usage, and that is really gratifying for us. We were also cautious, just knowing how challenging the COVID situation is now, and really wanted to make sure that we had sort of redundant capacity built into our staffing model, just in case we start to see some infections, and we start to see staff either having illnesses themselves or needing to be quarantined because of exposure, or because they're working with have families that they're taking care of. So we were really cautious in that. And then the other thing that we've been really focused on is the air quality index. We have really, for those of you who are in person, we have our fall program guide. It lists all the locations of our in-person story times and work with youth, and a lot of that is in our parks. And so for the first time, we've actually had to think about, okay, when air quality goes to orange, how do we adapt? And then when air quality goes to red and we need to cancel because it's unhealthy for all groups, how do we communicate that? And so we're when people are signing up, we're trying to have better, notices about, hey, check the air quality. We put it on our social media. We have signage. That piece of, we did such a good job getting all of our programming in the parks, and we now need to really be thoughtful about when it is appropriate to cancel that great program in the park. And then finally, I just want to reiterate what Jill said and thank the Friends for their support of the Boise Comic Arts Festival. It was a really, really fun event. We had cosplay of all age groups and dogs. We had vendors. We had, learning how to draw, how to create your fantasy world, how to do Dungeons and Dragons and battles. And it was just such a celebration of creativity and community. And just really want to thank the Friends, and then particularly our BCAF team that was, literally adjusting as we went up to how do we make sure we're doing this safe as we're seeing real concerns with the COVID numbers in our community. Any questions?
No, but congratulations on expanding service hours. That's difficult for anybody during this COVID environment.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we, as you noticed, you might have noticed from our packet, Collister, we needed to everybody else who had the staff in place, and Collister had to do the hours a week later, just because we're having the same hiring challenges that a lot of the public and private sector is now. And we knew we were having to keep people onboarded, but we didn't want to wait for all the other locations when they were ready to expand. But we did need to delay Collister just because are needing to have staff that are hired and onboarded and are ready to be working with the public is the real driver of when we can add hours back right
No, that's a great observation, Brian. It's been something that we've been having to definitely work through. Speaking of team members, Jessica was gracious enough to ask me, in some communication we had in regards to our staff here at the library. She allowed me to step onto your, what's it called again?
now. It's called our all staff
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I felt like I wanted to call it. I wasn't sure. So she holds those every 2 weeks, and it is held with all the team members of all of our locations at the library. And for team members that are unable to attend it live on person, because it's a Zoom call, then it's a recorded call that they can watch when they come in, arrival, and work with their manager to give them an opportunity to watch it and catch up on it. I learned so much on the call. I saw some great pictures in regards to the comic festival. Team is very engaged, had some really great dialogue back and forth with the team. But on behalf of the board, it was our opportunity to visit with the staff and thank them for just the ability to staff. Brian and Nikki, you're going to find this out. We work with some of the best staff members from any library that I'm familiar with. This team has pivoted immensely. Is the air quality going to work? Are they, can we find all these locations outside at parks to bring the topics and the content that is relevant to our public and that our community is looking for? Hands down, this team has worked so incredibly hard to bring that to the table, and they're creative and they just have this great can-do, just aurora about them. It's very consistent. And so I stepped onto that. I crashed Jessica's meeting to thank the staff and really let them know that it's really their safety has been the epicenter of what we've really has driven our decisions on a lot of things. Yes, we want to make sure we're providing the appropriate content and what the community is looking for, but we also want to make sure that we're keeping our staff very safe throughout this whole process while we've tried to figure this out. And they have just rolled up their sleeves and worked so incredibly hard. So that was our opportunity on behalf of the board to really make sure that we were providing that to each of our team members.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you for that. I've heard really positive, but the staff reacted really positively to that. And I think one of the things that the board has asked me is, to make sure that, you're prioritizing safety of the staff, and the staff are really curious about the board and what do they think and how are they making decisions. And so finding that opportunity for you to be part of that staff meeting, I think served both purposes.
It did. Absolutely. Yep. They were great to have that meeting with. Any questions for Jessica at this time for her director report? Okay. All right. So for new staff or new board members, this will be a great one. So that education item coming up, we have Kathy Stadler on. I believe she's going to review the collection development and intellectual freedom issues in the library community today. And I don't see Kathy. So if you're here, Kathy, if you could unmute yourself.
She is.
Hi. Hi there.
Thanks for having me. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen share. Hopefully it's going to work smoothly. And let's see.
Kathy, can you just explain your role a little bit too, particularly for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I am in the acquisitions and technical services manager role. So I supervise the group that does the collection development, also does the processing of items, brings on digital content, looks through contracts and things. We've been working with Ed quite closely on some contracts lately, which has been great. So yeah, it's a very fun role. It's kind of a behind the scenes role, and it's really a huge part of what we do as the library, and yet not one of the more forward facing groups. So we rely heavily on our public facing counterparts in order to give us information and feedback. We also do a ton of data analysis, and that's kind of part of what I want to talk about today. And walk through some of the different things. I know that with the new board members, and welcome, it's great to have new board members, and it's great to see some of the other people. Tanya, you've been with us a long time. That's been wonderful. So it's, for me, I want to kind of give an overview, but then also figure out what types of questions you have, and then how we can better continue to give you the information that you want and need from us. So Jessica, is there anything else you want me to
That was great.
first?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So hopefully you can see my screen, Collections, the Inside Scoop. And what I want to talk about is just a brief touch on intellectual freedom, and then digital content, a story with statistics, and then mostly I wanted to kind of get into your questions, what you were interested in that I haven't covered. So I know that the review this month is for the policy is to look at the collections part of the manual. So I know you've read through a lot of that, and so I don't want to spend too much time talking about some of that if it just because if you've already read it, then you can ask me questions if there's anything that you want more information on. But intellectual freedom, so it's really the foundation of what we do with our collections. I put up the definition that the American Library Association, they have put forward for what intellectual freedom is and what it means. And basically, in a nutshell, it's trying to make sure that we provide information on every side of the topic that we can. And we do take that very seriously. There are times when we put things into the collection that, on a personal level, we don't agree with, or on a professional level, we think, ooh, I'm not sure if this is the best thing that we want to put out there. Sometimes it's hard to know if something is nonfiction or if it's, a fictionalized memoir, or where it's leaning. A lot of that has gotten harder to navigate over the years. But we look at it from the point of view that if there's interest from our community, then we need to be offering what we can on the topic. So from that point of view, we really, I think, are one of the radical places in the world. We are a public institution. We're one of the few, and we also try to provide information on every side of the topic. It isn't something that makes everybody happy all the time, so it can be pretty contentious sometimes. And interestingly enough, though, we don't see a lot of requests for reconsiderations come through on a formal level. So we do, I think, a pretty good job of explaining, why we do what we do. We're offering things to the community, all of our community. We try to make sure that we are inclusive on every level on what we're providing, even if it's not popular. So we have a pretty solid collection development policy that covers, what types of things we offer, what we're looking for, and what we think about as we develop the collections. And then we also include the American Library Association documents, the Library Bill of Rights, and then the Freedom to Read statement. We're firm believers in providing information and letting people choose for themselves whether they interact with it, how they interact with it. And then we also have the exclusion of materials policy. So just kind of a quick capture of that. If a user decides that they don't like something and they want to see us evaluate it, they need to go through the formal process of filling out the form, which is also part of this month's review. Once the form gets filled out, then it comes to us in collection development. What we do is we research the item, so it can take some time. We want to really do due diligence when we hear from the community that they have some concerns. So we look into it, we do the research, we try to find out, why did we add this item in particular? What makes it a valuable addition to our collection? Whether we need to maybe move it to a different part of the collection, whether it is a viable thing to continue to have in the collection, and then we respond. If at that point the user doesn't appreciate the response, doesn't feel like we did due diligence or doesn't agree with it, then they can take it to the director and the library board. So those are the steps that it goes through. I don't think we've had a request for reconsideration go all the way to the library board since I've been here. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think we have. Knock on wood that I didn't just, jinx things. But most often we do, because of the thorough research that we do, if we get a request for reconsideration, even if the user might not be completely satisfied with the decision, they generally will take that and move along. There has been a time or two when somebody has pointed out, hey, this item doesn't have factual information in it. There was a book on snakes, for example, and it had incorrect information, so we just pulled it. I mean, that type of thing, that's kind of a slam dunk. You know, we don't want something that we know is not factual in the collection. Beyond that, sometimes we've moved materials from one collection to another, but we haven't generally pulled anything, and that's, I think it goes to the fact that, you know, we are following our policy when we're developing the collection with an eye to what's going to work for our community and provide a well-rounded collection. So anything on that? I mean, I can wait till the end for questions. You can feel free to interrupt me, whatever works for you. I want to be responsive to what you want to hear.
Well, just so I can get an idea for the level of activity, is it 1 a year, 5 a year?
It's sort of interesting because we will go for a long stretch and not have any, and then we'll get a bunch. And by a bunch, I mean like 4 to 5 sometimes. I think the last group that we had was probably 2019. So we haven't had an official request for reconsideration on a specific title for almost 2 years, I think. And then at that time, I think we had maybe 4 come through.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting. During that grouping, we had one that we got a request for reconsideration on, and it had actually been a purchase request from a different member of the community. So, it's one of those interesting push and pulls. And so our group gets to see that a little bit more in action. So, yeah. Okay. I do know that there's a lot of interest in digital content and what it means for libraries and versus what it means for the public. And it can be very hard to kind of pick apart the curtains. Pull aside the curtains so that you can actually see what we do in libraries and why we don't have the same level of access. So digital content is not protected by the first sale doctrine. So we can buy books in print in bulk, and we can lend them to readers free of charge. And we can do that as long as the item can be lent. So as long as it is in good enough shape and we can continue to offer it, that's something that once we've bought one copy, we can do that. That does not play into the digital field at all. So right now, there are some libraries, I think back east, that are pushing back on that and trying to figure out if there's a way that we can get a first sale doctrine in the digital realm. I don't know where that's going to go, but I'm hopeful that maybe someday, because that is a pretty painful point of service for the moment for libraries, because it's expensive and it's a high need. So, but that informs a lot of why the digital content behaves so differently than our normal collections of print. Most publishers right now, they sell their ebooks and audiobooks to third-party vendors. So we can access the content by going through a third party. So for example, Overdrive is one of the ones that we use the most heavily. Part of that is because platform fatigue is a real thing. When we bring on additional platforms, we've found that it's really hard to get our users to want to try them out. It's not easy and seamless for them to find a title that they're interested in. Not too many people want to have to go to 4 different platforms to try and figure out if they can check out this book. So, and I'm speaking mostly right now to just ebooks and e-audio. That is its one kind of realm of digital content. And then the other realm is like newspaper access and research resources, things like that. So this is mostly for the digital ebooks and e-audio. And they can so then the third party vendor really has a lot of say in how we access the materials. Some of that comes from the publishers themselves, and then some of it comes from the vendor. So for example, most of what we buy now is actually metered. So when we purchase a title from Overdrive, we purchase it generally for 26 checkouts. So Sometime in the past, the publishers all came to the conclusion that most print books only circulate 26 times before they are broken. So they decided to enact that for digital content. Most libraries note that that's not exactly the case. Maybe that's an average, if you were to take every library everywhere. Children a little harder on print books, for example, than adults are. So you have to replace those a little more often, but 26 checkouts is pretty conservative. And so it goes by really quickly. And digital content is one of those things too that, if somebody checks it out and doesn't read it, we don't get any credit. It's just, that's a used checkout. So the other way that they meter is by time. So sometimes we can purchase a title and it will be metered by 12 months or 24 months access. We can have as many checkouts in that time frame as we can get, but at the end of the time frame, then it expires. Our access to it expires. Sometimes it's metered by both. So it's metered by 12 months or 26 checkouts, or 24 months or 26 checkouts. So it makes it really challenging on the back end to purchase content and to continue to offer content. That's why series are such a painful thing, and why we don't always have all of the series. So I know that's a very frustrating thing for our users. And they're expensive. We don't get the same pricing at any level that the users do. So we see a huge markup. And then when you consider that we have to repurchase the content very regularly, it's a struggle. So we can't develop our collections for audiobooks and ebooks like we do our actual physical collections. So that's, those are each a pain point. We can buy some content where we just own it. It's one copy, one user, and it's perpetual access until the publisher pulls our rights. And that happens too. So sometimes Overdrive will lose rights to a title. So even though that we purchased it, then we can't get it again. Or they take it out of the collection, or sometimes we'll get a huge holds queue on a title and then we can't buy more copies of it because they don't have rights to it anymore. So those are all kind of the things that happen in the background that are not super visible to the public. It's not easy to explain, and people get frustrated, and I totally understand it. There's a disconnect between vendors thinking that what they're offering is very reasonable and libraries saying it's not so reasonable. And so that is, I think that that's the struggle right now, is trying to figure out what we can do that's sustainable for both. Libraries definitely are not in the business of trying to put publishers out of business. We need their content in order to be able to offer what we do. So we want to play nicely, but we also want it to work for us and for our budgets and for our users. So if you're interested, there's additional reading. So the first one, The Surprisingly Big Business of Library Ebooks, that one just came out. It was a New Yorker article. It's a pretty good article, and it talks a lot about, the costs for libraries versus the cost for a regular user. And it's some good insight. It talks a lot about Overdrive. There are other platforms out there. We explore them. We try to make sure that we are doing due diligence on what we're offering. Can we find something that's a better product? Overdrive has continued to buy different companies. So we had been offering audio through RB Digital because it was a little bit more sustainable model for us. Overdrive bought out RB Digital last year. So that got absorbed into the collective. And then just recently, Overdrive also purchased Canopy, which is one of the streaming video services that libraries had gone with a lot. So that consolidation is also a little bit problematic. It makes it so that there's a little less negotiation opportunity for libraries on the back end. The second one is want to borrow that ebook from a library. Sorry, Amazon won't let you. So Amazon is actually a fairly large publisher in their own right. It's kind of a sneaky behind the scenes thing. They really want you to just use their stuff. So audible.com is one of our biggest competitors when it comes to e-audiobooks. And Amazon actually does a lot of their they have sole rights to a lot of audiobooks. So sometimes we can get ebooks from certain authors, but we can't get their audiobook. And that's because it's only available in Audible, and Amazon is not interested in allowing libraries to have access to that. They have made some of their titles available through, I think it's the, I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but it's basically the digital libraries, public library online. But it's
DPLA?
not, yeah,
It's
DPLA.
not DPLA, okay. Digital Public Library of America, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So they have made some of their catalog available through DPLA. It isn't generally the authors that most people are looking for. So that hasn't been something that we've explored too seriously, just because it would be another platform and it's not exactly going to fill the need that I think people are really wanting to get filled at the moment. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't be open to it. It just needs to make sense before we bring on another platform. The third one then is Mcmillan abandons library ebook embargo. This one to me was a little bit interesting, and I just wanted to include it because the publishers do sometimes just spring on libraries that they're going to do something completely different with content. And for example, Mcmillan decided that they were going to only allow libraries to purchase one copy, and then that title would be embargoed for, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks, and then we couldn't get any more copies. So it didn't matter how many holds we had, it didn't, and then they had, it was an interesting, you know, you could buy this copy for this much and an additional copy on top of that for more. So it was a really messy and frustrating thing. Libraries did come together and actually boycotted Mcmillan over that. Boise was a part of the boycott. And Mcmillan stepped back from that embargo. It happened about the time of the pandemic really kind of picking up speed. So we don't know whether it was them just choosing to withdraw because of the boycott and realizing that it actually wasn't impacting their sales, or if it was because of the pandemic and maybe they just didn't, they wanted to make sure that their content was getting out there. So that one's a hard one to know for sure what happened, but they did step back from the boycott, so that was positive. So just kind of some insights. Oh, before I move on to this one, and this is a really interesting one, so I'm going to back up because I don't want you to get distracted. But I do want to speak a little bit to our digital resources that are not ebooks and e-audiobooks. So we do offer a wide variety of resources that are subscription based, and where we just pay a flat fee for the year and then people can access the content. Or we negotiate with the vendors and try and purchase perpetual content access. So for example, Mango Languages is one of the ones. Years ago, we negotiated a perpetual purchase. So now we just pay basically an annual access fee, and it's a pretty reasonable amount. So now we can offer Mango for as long as the product is out there. That is a very unusual model. Most of our vendors don't do that. So every year we have to re-up with them and pay another purchase fee. There are a lot of resources out there that would be amazing for us to offer, but they don't offer it to libraries. So it's problematic because it takes a lot of back-end work in order to authenticate library users so that it doesn't allow everybody to just access the content. So most providers of digital content want individual subscribers because they can make more money. And the ones that actually are interested in maybe getting into library access, it's problematic because they don't have enough infrastructure built in on the back end to authenticate properly so that we can make sure that only our users and the people we're paying for access the content. So we are very limited on what we can offer. Newspapers have been an ongoing frustration with the pandemic. We had offered, I think it was 2 years ago, we tried offering New York Times, maybe it was 3, the New York Times online access. It was not user-friendly and it was limited content. So even though we were paying them for our library users to access it, it was problematic for access points. And then there was also several parts of the digital content that our users didn't have access to. You'd have to subscribe to it individually to get the content. So we stopped subscribing to that. We have looked into other newspaper resources that are offered to libraries. The latest one that we looked at, they embargoed all of the newspapers. I can't remember, I think it was for a few weeks, might have been longer, but it was definitely long enough that we thought it's not a worthwhile thing, because most people want the news in a timely fashion, not several weeks later. And there wasn't enough of an archive that would make it worthwhile for any kind of research purposes. So it's frustrating because it looks like there's so many great resources out there, and as an individual subscriber there are. As a library, it's challenging to offer the types of services and the level of service that we know our users would like. The Idaho Statesman is a pretty good example. We used to try and get digital access through the Idaho Statesman, but they don't have any kind of authentication built in, as most newspapers don't, for libraries. So then we started going through Newsbank, which is, it's the biggest newspaper offerer probably that in the business, and they own a lot of that content. So we have to pay a very substantial amount in the background. That's why we paid so much for our latest chunk of content, which we do then have perpetual access to. That's what Ed has been helping us negotiate the contract for, to make sure that we get as best of terms as we can. So, but that is a hard piece to try and navigate. I know that there will be questions on digital content, so I'm going to go ahead and move on, and then we can talk about digital content at the end, unless you want to do it now.
Other questions now, or let's go ahead and we'll hold it for now, Kathy.
Okay, sounds good. So now to the story with the statistics. I loved the Lego thing, where basically it kind of talks about, what you're actually getting when you get the story. And that's the thing to me. So with an average cost of an item, I thought it would be interesting for you all to be able to see that. For books, it's about $15.31, AV $27.18, and then for digital ebooks and e-audio, it's $36.04, and that's if it's combined. We pay a lot more for adult titles than we do for youth titles. So for example, it's about $10 more per item that we pay for adult books, which is a pretty substantial amount, especially because most of our users of digital content are adults. So that's where we put most of our money, is to adult titles. So it's a much heavier lift budget-wise. So what you're seeing is we do try to look at how many circulations we get, and then we try to make sure that how much we're spending aligns with our circulations. So we want to make sure that what we're doing for our users is what they want to see. So it just has kind of the overall circs for youth and adult. We do break it down, so the budget lines are broken out, youth and then adult. So that's how we look at things for the most part. We don't break down too nitty gritty on the overview stuff. When we're looking at it, we dive way into the weeds. So I'm just looking at it from the overview. I'm assuming that's where most of you want to stay. But you can see that in the 2020 circulation, we had 30% of the physical checkouts were youth, 35% of the physical checkouts were adult, and then we had 10% digital checkouts for youth, and then 26% digital checkouts for adult. That's where it really shows, we're spending a lot more money for digital adult content to try and meet the need. Overall, in circulations, 40% were youth circulations and 60% were adult. For the funds, we got a substantial amount of gift funds that we could put towards digital content, in particular with the shutdown, which was wonderful. So I wanted to include that. So the numbers that I'm showing here include the gift funds that we were able to get. So it's the same type of a breakdown. So we spent 29% on youth physical items, 38% on adult physical items, 5% youth digital, 27% adult digital. And it does make sense with the youth digital being a lower percentage of the budget spent, just because those items do tend to be a little cheaper than the adult ones. So we're always constantly trying to balance that out. But statistically, and I'll show a graph of this at the end, but we are seeing our digital content checkout sort of stabilize again. It's not as high as it had been. It's come down a bit, and then we're kind of seeing almost a baseline trend again. So that will be, as we continue to move forward, we'll continue to monitor it, make sure that we're putting money where it makes sense. I wanted to also, go ahead.
Generally, we should assume there's 26 checkouts per item as a max.
For digital content. And but that's a really messy one, just because if we do, like for some of our titles, if it's a one copy, one user, and we own it, then we can have hundreds of checkouts on that item. And we have some of that content. When we first started with Overdrive back in, I think it was 2010, most of the content we could purchase. So we do have kind of I don't know, the historical titles that we own. Youth titles for audiobooks tend to be more where we can actually purchase them. We're getting more metered access with audiobooks, especially in the adult realm. So.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you look at our website under the research and learning, particular for business, there's a very long list of services there.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to provide any kind of guess as to how much of our electronic funds are put into that as a percentage compared to buying ebooks and audiobooks?
Rough, just very kind of rough numbers off the top of my head. We generally spend, I think it's just under 200,000 on the subscriptions. Part of that is platform fees. So for example, Overdrive, we pay them an annual platform fee. So that includes that access.
So if I'm looking at you're saying that we spend a third of our $1 million on digital.
This is just for, I did not include the subscription.
Okay, so the subscriptions are on top of the $1 million?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then just kind of pre-pandemic numbers, I just wanted to throw this in there so that you could see the pandemic has shifted things. And so I just wanted to kind of give a nod to that. I don't know that we need to go through it in super detail like I did with the first screen, but I'll let you kind of look over it, see if any questions jump out at you.
If you look going forward, you said that you felt like the digital side had stabilized a little bit. So if you go back to that previous slide, are you thinking that 33% number, the 36 and the 33, those are good estimates looking at the next few years?
Yes, I think so. I think it's a little bit skewed because when we're looking at the circulations and then the budget that we're assigning, so the circulations for 2020 were quite a bit higher than years previously, and that's because we saw such a big jump. That's what I really want to monitor for this coming year to see, is that a continued trend? You know, are we going to stabilize at that point, or because it has dropped from the highest that we had? We don't see as many, we did gain unique users in Overdrive and we track that number too. But we don't have as many unique users in Overdrive, for example, as we do for the physical collections. So it'll be interesting to see with the expanded access to the collections again, whether we continue to see the driving need in digital.
So just a comment. I asked you about these, I think what you called the subscriptions that we're spending on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in what the usage is of those. And I'd like to look at it more from the perspective of not not so much, if people aren't using it, we need to cut it out, but more from the perspective of, if the usage isn't very high, how do we publicize it and get people to use it? Because I think there's some really good resources there that I would be willing to put a large bet that most people don't know are there.
Yep.
And I would really like to see how we can promote those, and along the theme of, the library being a community resource and a place for learning and a tool set for lots of people, that, how can we really publicize those so that they are known and we're effective in delivering those?
Your comment's spot on. We have a team that works on that and works on promotion and tries to find new ways to do it. It is one of the challenges I think that libraries struggle with the most. We're not that great at promotion of what we offer, either with events, digital content, what have you. And it is a challenge, to try and get the right people matched up with the promotional stuff that we can put out there. And I think that it should be a real focus as we move forward on. We are spending a lot of money on our offerings, so we want to make sure that we're trying to get it to the right people.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great observation.
Is Overdrive and Libby the reader? Is that the dominant one, or is it evenly sprinkled across a variety of tools?
Overdrive Libby is our dominant ebook e-audio. That is really where we have most of the content. We have some specialized ones like the O'Reilly database, which has a lot of programming heavy types of materials in it. But those, they don't really fall into that kind of general reader category for Overdrive and Libby. The resources that we offer as subscription based are very, very different. And we've tried to make sure that we're hitting a variety of needs that the community's using. And it can be a challenge. Did I answer the question? I'm not sure if I.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I'm working my way through all the different tools and seeing how complicated they are and what's on them. And it's a pretty impressive list. Getting to the earlier question and comment, promotion is a good strategy, but there's a lot there that I wasn't aware of, frankly. And it's not that complicated to access, is my assessment after getting about halfway through everything.
Yeah. And one of the things is it's kind of buried, on the website. A lot of our resources are a little more hidden. I think we've been doing a better job of trying to highlight them. Hopefully, if we can get a new website at some point or a different strategy for highlighting them, we're open to suggestions for sure, because it is hard to get the right people looking at the content.
Any other questions for Kathy from the board?
I have one more slide. I know I'm taking forever. I'm sorry. This last one just shows we have the content. So the top line is how many items we have in the collection, physical items. And then the bottom line, the blue line, is the physical items that are checked out, and we take snapshots of that, and we've been tracking it since 2017. And then the green line is digital items and how they've checked out. So I think that it's an interesting one, because as we see that we bring down some of our physical item offerings, then we've actually seen some increases in usage. You can see some of the dips that are pretty regular. And so in May, we tend to see a dip. In December, we tend to see a dip. And then also in August. That tends to coincide with, school ins and outs, and holidays. And then this green line, it does show a little bit about what I mean by the digital contents. We saw that spike, and then we kind of saw it drop down a bit, and now we're just kind of seeing some minor fluctuations, sort of steadying out a little bit. So that's why we want to watch it and see how that goes. We also do a deep dive into the assessment. So this is an overview. This is just picture books. we take a look at what each location's doing, whether we have a good number there, how many times they're turning over, what our circulation checkouts are, whether the items are grubby, whether we need to refresh it, how new the collection's looking, stuff like that. And then, any other questions that you have?
Kathy, not necessarily a question, but that's a great overview of a behind the scenes piece, especially for our new trustees. But it's a great refresher for those of us that have been on the board for a while as well, just to kind of see that. Do you see anything additional on the horizon? I mean, that digital content has a lot of, there's a lot to it, way more, again, that I kind of set off to the side because I'm not on it, into it day to day like you are. In the near future, are you hearing anything on the horizon outside of the digital content, or are we kind of still, this will be the continued conversation going on from the cost perspective and the usage, the limits to the checkouts for each title, for instance?
I think we need to watch really closely what happens with some of the lawsuits that are being filed back east to see if they make any progress. I think that it's just, I think that this is where we're at for a few years at least.
You know what it feels like?
Yeah. And it's hard because we continue to spend more budget on digital content. We don't want to shortchange the physical content because we know that that's what a lot of our users come in for. So it's hard. It's a hard balance. Mm-hmm. And having to repurchase content makes it less sustainable just because.
Right. Yeah, well, that's great insight. Thank you for that presentation, Kathy. Very, very, very insightful. Fellow trustees, any additional questions for Kathy or observations? Well, I know we were very captivated, Kathy. Thank you. Great information. Thank you. All right. I think up next is Sarah Kelly Chase with the Boise Public Library Policy Review, Section 5.
Yeah. Hello. I'm Sarah. I'm the Public Services Manager for the library, and I do the monthly policy review with the board. So throughout the fiscal year, you'll look at each section of policy. Sometimes we jump around a little bit. We actually are doing Section 5 today because we wanted to save all of this meaty information for our new trustees. Kathy, thank you so much for the great tee-up so that you've got a lot of background that goes with all of this policy work. As far as policy review, there's 8 sections. The board sets policy, and then library leadership and staff work on the regulation piece. We do run things past you if we're going to change regulation, but those are really the supplementary materials or the guidelines for upholding the policy. That's what the regulation piece does. So for Section 5, collection, development, and maintenance, there are sections that Kathy shared, such as the ALA Library Bill of Rights, Freedom to Read Statement. Those are those supplementary pieces. But we are not recommending any changes. This is a very solid policy that's really withstood the test of time, and the collection development team has done a great job making sure everything's still in sync. We also check with Ed on policy each month too. He can check for case law to make sure we haven't missed something else that has changed so that we are keeping up. So that was a whole bunch. Kathy did the bulk. Does anyone have any questions about this section?
Any questions for Sarah? Okay, no questions, Sarah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, new business is a selection of meeting dates for fiscal year 2022. So for our newest trustees, on an annual basis at our annual meeting in September, we select the dates that we have for the upcoming year to make sure that we are getting those on our calendars, and we're ensuring that our team here at the library has timing correct for preparing the packets and the materials and all of the reporting, and then the reporting also to notification to the public as well. So we are required to adopt and establish the meeting. We've got 2 proposed options on the table. And so it's our opportunity to take a look at those. And I believe the option 1 is starting on October 14th, 2021. The option would be on the second Thursday of each month. Again, same time frame, 11:30 here at the main library, in addition to being on the Zoom call option. With the exception of the November 11th meeting, it does fall on a Veterans holiday, so the proposed was for November 4th. The second option in your packet is on the second Wednesday of each month as well. And that one appeared to not have any conflict in regards to holidays. In addition, the same time frame at 11:30 here at the Marion Bingham Library, the room here at the main library, in addition also for the Zoom option calls. So with that, I would look to hear from the board. We have a board member that would like to make a motion to approve either one of these dates on the schedule. We can open it up for discussion.
If all things being equal, and if there are no conflicts for Wednesday for a school teacher, again, and I'm falling upon the grace of the group here, there is no coverage in public schools right now. There are no substitutes. It's wacky. So coverage for what's available in the building is a lot easier for me on Wednesday, but I fully recognize I am one person and there is a massive team behind everything with staff. And so if Wednesday is available, I would take it. But if Thursday is what works best for the group, we will make it happen. You just may have my babies in the background.
So
Preference for Wednesdays also, not a strong preference, but
okay.
Slight preference.
Okay. Wednesdays work, either day works for me. Phil, of those 2 dates, the second Wednesday or second Thursday, is there a preference for you? Or do either of those dates
Go
work?
ahead and make a motion and move that we adopt option 2 with the meetings on Wednesday.
Okay.
Second.
Oh, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, none opposed.
Tanya,
Yes.
you did say that Zoom options will be available going forward.
Yes.
Definitely.
I don't know if indefinitely, but for the near future,
Relative to this
yes.
calendar.
Yes, for your information, we do have to have one trustee here on site during the meeting, and that typically is myself in my current role. And then we do have the Zoom option for the rest of our trustees to be on the call through Zoom. Yeah, so that would work. Does that answer your
It
question?
does, yes. Always
Okay.
my preference to be here in person, but it's nice to have the flexibility. to be remote.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so motion passes and we have option 2 on the board then for second Wednesday of each month. So thank you.
So Tanya, just really quickly, that means next month will be the 13th then?
Yes, starting October 13th, correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. All right, next up is the election of officers. So we are looking to nominate and elect a president and a vice president for a 1-year term commencing on October 2021. And I can't remember, are we supposed to have a special wording on this, or can we just make a nomination? I think I could just make a nomination. Okay. I'm going to speak up first then, and I am going to nominate, I did have a chance to visit with Phil, and Phil has some interest in stepping into our vice president role here on the library board. So I would like to nominate Phil for the 1-year term as vice president.
An enthusiastic second.
Thank you, Sonia. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Phil, do you accept that vice president role?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Phil. And then do we have a nomination for the president role commencing in October for the 1-year term?
I would like to nominate Tanya Westensko for the president's role on the board.
An equally enthusiastic second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your enthusiasm, Sonia. All right, thank you, Phil, and I look forward to supporting our board in the role as the president. Okay, section 10 is review, amend, and repeal, adopt bylaws, policies, and procedures. This item is for discussion only, requires no action from the trustees. It is included in our packet. Do we have someone presenting on this one?
We don't, but I'd be happy to speak.
Okay, Jessica.
Annually, as Sarah mentioned, you go through, the board goes through every policy and for our new board members, some boards do it all in one meeting, and we actually do it throughout the year on a rotating basis, just so that you have a chance for us to review and then have a discussion or answer any questions. So this, in our annual meeting, this is confirming that we've done that. And then I'll just raise briefly that one of the things that I'm looking at is the bylaws, which are also in your packet. The last time that the library board did a deep review of the bylaws was in 2011. And so one of the, that I think is at some point we may think about when we would want to really ask the board to really look at those deeply. With everything that's going on right now with COVID and then coming up for strategic planning, I don't think that, I'm not recommending that right now, but it is something that I do think we would benefit from at some point, is just having that thorough process of going through the bylaws again.
Agreed. And I think that on my notes, I was trying to find my notes here, that previously there were 2 board members, so it doesn't, so it's not a quorum, but that there were two board members that did work with the legal to review the bylaws at that time. And so we will bring that back to the board at a later date to look at that process. And so be thinking about that if you have some interest in participating in that discussion. And then, again, I know each of you have gone through, I think that, there's a couple of things that always, pop out at me, is the attendance, making sure that, we are doing everything we can possibly to maintain our attendance here as board. We have a really important role that we play in, all the agenda in our conversation and our feedback. And so it's really important that we be here for that, for each of the meetings. And then also, just weighing in throughout the process. It's so important that we hear from each of us as board members to make sure that we all bring this very diverse piece to our roles. And it's really important that we bring that diversity to each of our board meetings when we are reviewing all information in regards to the library. So we, again, will be regrouping at a later date down the road to review the bylaws. So thank you. Any questions, fellow trustees? No? Okay. All right. So next up, I have the selection of payment vouchers from Gallaudet. So Sonia, are you able to do that for the month of September?
And October, or
they'll be through September through the until the next meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we would have to make a change that the selection of the next meeting date says in your packet Thursday, October 14th. However, it will be Wednesday, October 13th. Okay, so I believe, does Phil or Sonia, do you have the executive session that you can move us into executive session documentation?
Yeah.
Carrie would have sent that over.
So I moved it under provisions of the Idaho State Code 74-206 1F that this board recess to an executive session to communicate with legal counsel about legal options for pending litigation and that a roll call be taken on this motion.
Okay, thank you, Phil. And then Carrie, will you take a roll call for us, please? Oh, second. I apologize. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I think Nikki got
Give
it
it to
there. Thank
Nikki.
you.
Give it to Nikki. She beat
Okay,
me.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, you have to go one by
We'll
one.
roll call.
Okay. Okay. Now can we have the roll call, please, Carrie?
You bet. Gallaudet,
Yes.
Clenny,
Yes.
Magnuson,
Yes.
Pantera,
Yes.
Weston Sko.
Yes.